Welcome to Montana. Montana encourages filming in the state by offering a state tax credit for production companies. In this video, we'll explain the steps you can take to apply for this tax credit when you film in Montana. MEDIA stands for Montana Economic Development Industry Advancement. It is a non-refundable income tax credit that production companies can receive based on expenditures they incur while filming in Montana. Montana issues credit that can range from 15% to 35% of the production's total expenses. Let's take a look at the different percentages of credit issued. 15% of compensation for non-resident crew members, 25% of compensation for Montana resident crew, 30% of compensation paid to a student enrolled in a Montana college or university, 20% of above-the-line compensation, 25% of post-production wages, 20% of qualifying expenditures. Yes, you can get extra credit. 10% of payments to Montana colleges or universities for stage, equipment, rentals, or location fees. 10% of all in-studio facility or equipment expenditures rented from a studio for 20 days or more. 5% for using Filmed in Montana screen credit logo. 5% of expenditures incurred in an underserved area, not including compensation.
We're going to talk about the application process. Since you're most likely a production company planning to apply for the media credit, here are the steps you'll need to take to apply. At least 7 to 10 days before applying for the pre-certification with the Montana Film Office, register the production company with the Montana Secretary of State. Forms can be downloaded online at sosmt.gov/business or requested from the SOS Business Service Division by calling 406-444-3665. Apply for pre-certification with the Montana Film Office. Remember, you must apply before the start of principal photography. Submissions are not complete until $500 filing fee is received. Upon approval, production companies will receive a letter from the Montana Film Office with specific instructions on the program. Approval or denial is issued within 7 to 10 business days of us receiving the application. If production has the base investment of less than $50,000, it will not qualify for the credit. Film your production. Remember, during production, to keep an accurate record and receipts of qualified Montana expenditures and payroll records for employees working on the production, including a completed media comp form for every employee on your project. Submit an application to the Department of Revenue. The Department of Commerce will provide you with a packet of all the forms you will need to fill out for the Department of Revenue when you apply for pre-certification. The production company must pay a fee to the Department of Revenue of $500 for productions with a base investment of $350,000 or less, and $1,000 for production with a base investment over $350,000, or for post-productions of any amount. If the production has a base investment over $350,000, you will need to submit a CPA verification report as well. If your production has a base investment less than $350,000, no CPA report is required. After you submit your application, we review it and request additional documents as needed. Then you receive your credit. At this time, you can either claim the credit on the appropriate tax return form for your entity or sell the credit. The Montana Film Office has an incentive calculator estimator you can use to approximate how much credit you'll receive.
Forms required by the Montana Department of Revenue. The Media Credit Application, Media-Credit, provides information about the application, the production, and the authorized contacts. Submission of Costs Form, Form MC-SOC, a checklist of forms to provide with the submission of costs. Documents to be submitted with the submission of costs form. Submission of costs, media credit spreadsheet. Spreadsheet for entering expenses and compensation and for calculating the media credit. A media compensation form for every worker. Form Media Comp to verify that an employee performed work in Montana and to claim an additional credit for above-the-line employees, Montana residents, and students, earnings reports, payroll reports, check stubs, and backup documentation, itemized reports and/or spreadsheets of both compensation and expenditures in .xlsx format, loan-out agreements, if applicable, loan-out withholding, if applicable, and filmed in Montana screen credit logo verification, if applicable, talent agreements, call sheets, Department of Commerce certification approval letter, payment of media credit application fee. Requirements are listed in Montana Code Annotated Section 1531.1006. Contents must include verification of the accuracy of compensation and expenditures, and opinions stating that there are no related party transactions or that any material related party transactions are properly disclosed and accounted for, a statement that the submission presents compensation and expenditure fairly. Once we receive a complete application, your application form, submission of costs, and CPA report, if applicable, your production will have its place in line secured. If no credit is available in the year for which your production was filmed, you will be bumped to the next year that the credit is available for up to 5 years. For example, if you filmed in 2024 and there is no credit available until 2027, you will have your credit reserved for 2027. When we issue your credit, you will get a 2027 credit with a 2-year carry forward. If there was credit available in 2024, you would have received credit for 2024 with a 5-year carry forward. A table on our website shows how much credit is available for each year.
Submission of cost spreadsheet, also known as SOC spreadsheet, is comprised of 2 costs. The first is compensation, which is wages and payments made to loan-out companies that is subject to loan-out withholding. The second cost is expenditures, and this is production cost that is incurred that is not compensation, post-production, marketing, and story rights, and this is incurred entirely in Montana. Base investment includes qualifying costs up to 6 months prior to the certification by the Department of Commerce Film Office through the end of principal photography. Principal photography means the time period in which the fundamental component of the project materializes in Montana. The start date of principal photography is the start date of shooting. The end date is when the production has wrapped in Montana.
A qualifying expenditure is a pre-production or production expense that is incurred in Montana and is directly related to qualified production activity, such as set construction and operation, wardrobe, makeup, accessories, photography, sound, lighting, editing, rental of facilities and equipment, leasing of vehicles, lodging costs, airfare if purchased through a Montana travel agency, and insurance if purchased through a Montana insurance company. Kit rental, per diem, and living allowance that is reported on a pay stub should be included as an expenditure and not as compensation. For an expense to qualify for media credit, the vendor must have a permanent place of business in Montana. That is, a physical presence in Montana through which a business's activity is conducted. For example, an office, factory, store, or workshop. Please make sure the business's physical address is on the invoice. The vendor must be registered to do business in Montana with the Montana Secretary of State. However, registering with the Secretary of State or appointing a registered agent does not in itself establish a physical location in Montana. A vendor acting as a conduit to enable purchases and rentals to qualify that would not otherwise qualify will not be considered a Montana vendor with respect to such purchases and rentals. Other examples of non-qualifying expenses include expenditures for footage shot outside of Montana, story rights, distribution, marketing, and post-production expenditures. An extra credit of 5% may be received for qualifying purchases made in underserved areas, which are the orange counties on the map. The underserved area credit does not apply to compensation. Examples of qualifying compensation include Montana wages, salaries and commissions, payments to a loan-out company, if state income tax withholding requirements are met, and union and fringe benefits. Generally, payments made to employees for anything other than personal services can be included in expenditures, but not in compensation. For a single crew or production staff member, the portion of compensation that exceeds $500,000 for a single production is not included when calculating the base investment. This restriction does not apply to actors, directors, producers, or writers.
Here are a few more details about the Department of Revenue's requirements regarding withholding and loan-out companies. A production company is required to withhold at the highest marginal tax rate of payments made to loan-out companies. To register a loan-out withholding account with the Montana Department of Revenue, you'll do it through Montana's transaction portal, also known as TAP. There you will file your media loan-out withholding reconciliation forms. The withholding is required to be submitted by January 31st of the following year, where the loan-out company provides services or is paid. Penalty and interest will be assessed if the payment is not made timely, and the credit will not be available until withholding report is filed and the withholding has been remitted. Information for loan-out companies. Loan-out companies are required to register with Montana's Secretary of State. Loan-out companies have a tax filing requirement, either Form PTE for small business corporations or partnerships, or for C Corps, Form CIT. The employee of loan-out companies will also have an individual income tax filing requirement.
Production companies or credit owners can claim the credit on their income tax return. If the production company or the credit owner is a pass-through entity, the credit must be passed to their owners based on their distributive share of profit and loss. The credit is non-refundable and has a carryover period of up to 5 years. However, the credit can also be transferred. So how does that work? A credit can be transferred only once a year. If you're a pass-through entity owner, you can transfer your credit independently from the other owners. The credit must be sold for at least 85% of its value. And there's also a 2% fee that you need to pay based on the amount of credit transferred. The carryover period of the credit is the same as the original credit. Now, if you're a credit owner and you find a buyer, you must notify the department within 30 days of the agreement with the buyer, and you must include with that notification the amount of credit transferred, the tax ID number of the transferee, the credit balance, and the certification number of the credit, as well as any other information the department requires. One last thing. If you are a credit broker, you need to register with the department before sending your first notification.
We hope you enjoy filming in the beautiful state of Montana and look forward to working with you. Please contact us if you have questions or are ready to submit your application.
The end.
The end.